I'd like to call to order the workshop for the month of August for the Marion City Council, City of Taneytown. Ask Councilman Vigliotti to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Joe.
And welcome back from our summer recess, I guess, July recess. Good to see you all here tonight, and we do have a full docket, but before we get into the meat of that docket, I have a very special presentation to make. Ms. Nina Smeek is a long-time employee, a 37-year employee for the city of Taneytown. She retired last month, and it's been an integral part of our city's operation for those 37 years, and we really do appreciate her service. I'd like to call her forward and present her with a plaque, and I'd like Councilman Vigliotti, who's the police liaison, to accompany me in this presentation. He has a little statement to read. The plaque doesn't go into much detail, but Joe, I'm sure will. It says, retirement award presented to Nina Smeek in recognition of 37 years of service to the city of Taneytown. You can see some of her. Yeah.
This is from Chief Tyler. Nina, I'm so very sorry I could not be here for you tonight, as a family emergency is taking me away from it. I can't begin to tell you how much you meant to me during your time as my administrative assistant. You were way much more than that to me and all the other officers, and I would like to make sure you know just how much we all love you. I remember many times you were a listener, a mom, and always had time for all your officers. It didn't matter. You always listened, and through the years you have touched so many lives and seen our kids grow up, and always made time and gave hugs to every one of them that came to the station. I just want you to know how very special they felt and how you etched a very special place in each one of their hearts, and I thank you so very much for that. Nina, you will always be a part of the Taneytown Police Department family, and we want you to enjoy your retirement you so greatly deserve. You made the city you cared about so much a better place. In closing, this plaque you are receiving, I hope every time you look at, you will know just how much you meant to all of us, especially to me. Thank you, Nina. Good luck, and God bless you. Chief William Tyler.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Why don't you get a picture with all the guys?
Oh, I know.
You want to... Mayor, do you want to get all the officers up here with Nina too? You want to get all the officers up?
Yeah.
Picture with all the officers.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Don't let her get away.
All right, get on up here. Come on up here. Oh!
No, don't do that.
You're not an employee, you're not covered under that anymore.
Let's take a picture.
All right. Stand up and see if we can poke in behind them a little bit.
That's a good idea.
Come on over. There you go, fill in the gaps.
I think you blocked everybody out, pretty much.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just got weird.
Okay.
All right,
Awesome.
before you break up, take one on the city camera. Jim, are you there?
Where's,
Pass that over. He wants one on that too.
That's right.
pass it to Jay or Jim or.
Oh, we got more.
I didn't see you out there.
Come on in.
Did you get a little? Yeah. I know, they're too busy hiding. We gotta get her up on a step somewhere.
Well, do you want to try to get you guys out front too?
Diane, you're so little.
Yeah, let's get get her out.
Add more.
Stand up, Diane.
Either that or the boys can take a knee. I mean, I'm not the way.
Yeah, that'll be the day.
I think you're going to have to do it again when they're actually doing
There you go. Perfect.
I'll squeeze next to the mayor.
Thank
All
you.
good? Awesome. Thank you, Nina.
I'm gonna miss your dogs.
Stay in touch now. You can't leave, right?
Okay.
They roll, don't they?
Make sure Justice doesn't leave.
I know he was following them all out the door.
Well, that was very nice. The first order of business tonight, well, the second order of business, I guess, is the review of the minutes. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes of June the 6th?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Hearing none, they'll be up for approval on Monday night. I now have time for some public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. Would anybody care to make a presentation on non-agenda items? Remember, you have state your name and address and have a 3-minute limit.
Marvin Flickinger, 80 East Baltimore Street, Taneytown. I'm personally aware of a situation in Baltimore County, and I was made aware of what is called a sovereign citizens movement. So I come home and looked it up on the computer, and it's an awful lot says about that movement. And I wish you all would write that down and go home and look that up on your computer, because it could pertain to Taneytown.
Anyone else? Moving right along. Does any council member have any conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest regarding the agenda items this evening?
No, sir.
Sir.
All right. On Monday, we will have adoption of a resolution 2018-08, the water allocation. Anybody have any questions on August's water allocation?
No, sir.
All right, we're moving right along. We'll have the city manager's report. Before you give that, let me just give an update to everybody on Henry, I guess. Henry is having a struggle. There's no doubt about that. He's recovering from his heart valve operation. He's was discovered to have cancer. He's under treatment for that cancer down at the University of Maryland Hospital in Baltimore. He's going through a radiation protocol, and I had a call into Lynn before later this afternoon, but I haven't got a call back yet. But she did text me saying that he went through his second treatment today, and everything went well. So keep Henry in your prayers. He's going through it. Okay, Jim.
Okay, I have a couple updates for you on the Tawny Stair visit. We have been in touch with them. They asked if we could schedule something for October or November. This is, they're wrapping up their fiscal year, so it's a very busy time for them the next couple months. But that is in the works. We talked a couple months ago about the Sewell Farm and the possibility of annexation for that. Since that meeting, they have presented the same information to the Planning Commission at the Commission's June meeting. And the recommendation from the Planning Commission, it wasn't unanimous, but the overall consensus was that we should continue talks, and they like the idea of an age-restricted development, preferably something having a variety of housing types and a continuing care or assisted living component as well. So that was their recommendation, was that that type of use for the property would be of benefit for the city. So at this point, we need some direction as to whether to continue talks with the Sewells and get into a little more of the nitty-gritty, or if the time isn't right or the council has a different opinion, we should know that so we can let them know.
Well, I'm certainly open to hearing what they have to say.
I've been reluctant to go forward with another annexation until, while we have so many units being built that meets crossing. And I voiced that opinion before. I'm not sure the timing is good for the town, the water allocations, or the amount of...
Well, we should probably discuss this because we need to come up with a recommendation on Monday night. You know, Meads Crossing probably is an 8 or 10 year project. And it's a completely different kind of project than the Sewells are proposing. But the idea of holding up any future development for 8 or 10 years really doesn't make much sense. And what will the conditions be like in 8 or 10 years? I mean, it may never happen. So my suggestion would be to allow them to, again, simply allowing them pursue annexation doesn't commit us to anything other than that they'd be annexed into town and they would be subject to higher taxes, which would be a good thing, right? So what I would suggest is that we consider their proposal, let them flesh it out and come back, work out the details with planning and zoning, bring it back to us, and we can provide the direction that's necessary to, you know, to stabilize this growth. Again, you've got to make hay while the sun shines. You don't want to. There's all these cliches that come to mind. Opportunity knocks but once, and on. But anyway, it's a project that could be a great benefit to the city. The fact that it's looking at an age-restricted community means that it will provide less services overall. It will generate much-needed tax dollars, and we certainly have the capacity to accept it if we want to. They additionally have what we think is a productive well on that property that could be added to the city. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to find out as we move forward. But to shut the door right at this point, I mean, we can shut the door anywhere down the line, but to shut the door at this point, I think, is counterproductive. That's my opinion.
And I agree with the mayor that, you know, entertaining annexation is not a bad idea right now. We just need to be extremely cautious going forward of what impact their ultimate plans are going to have on the city, and that's my main concern. I do want to see us stabilize after the growth that we've already approved before we go into something, especially of this size that they're recommending. So annexation, I'm completely for looking at and going into. But any other recommendation about the actual development itself, I'm hesitant to actually discuss at this point.
Well, the development would be much further down the line, correct?
We hope.
Well, if you look at Meads Crossing, they came to us in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't built a house yet. there was a economic problem in there too.
Yeah.
Right. And if economic problem happens with this one, we can expect it. If it doesn't, you could see it a lot sooner than what that was. So we just need to be careful with each step that we take in this process.
Well, again, we're in control. That's the
Right.
big thing. We don't annex, and we're not in control. They can still develop it. It would just be developed in the county rather than the city. So that's a big point right there.
So I think we need to like move ahead with them.
Okay. What else, Jim?
Well, next up on my report, we also talked a couple months ago about the Syrian property. This is property that is within our growth area but outside of the city limits, and it does lie, or a portion of it lies within the planned path of the Antrim Boulevard extension. We talked about the idea of
Mythical Antrim Boulevard.
I was gonna say, again, will that ever
Well,
happen?
let's be hopeful.
of taking that property out of the growth area so that they could enter ag preservation. They have applied through the Maryland Ag Preservation Fund. And a couple months ago, you sent it back to the Planning Commission for their opinion, and the consensus there was that provided we can acquire the 4.4 acre portion of the parcel that we need to preserve the bypass alignment, that there was no concern with the, no objection to the remainder of the property going into ag preservation that is, you know, not being in our growth area any longer. That, of course, wouldn't change the map, but effectively, there'd be no reason not to take them out when we do our comp plan update the next time, because there's no point in having, you know, preserved ag land within our growth area.
Would that agreement allow the town to purchase the 4.4 acres or just have it set aside?
Yes, what we're working towards is an option to buy, and we are targeting the state will do 2 appraisals for the ag preservation piece, and we've proposed that we would acquire the 4.4 acres based on the lower of the 2 appraisals. And the property owner is agreeable to that idea, so we do need to put everything in writing. But what we're hoping for Monday night would be to authorize the mayor to sign a purchase option for the property when we have that number. So we would be looking at, we believe a safe estimate would be to say $5,000 per acre. It will most likely come in lower than that. But that would be $22,000 to purchase the property. So we have a lot of detail to work out because it is in the county. So we would be looking at potentially a county subdivision process. Carroll County did acquire the property adjacent to this some years ago to preserve not the first piece, but it's a property very close to the current end of Antrim Boulevard by Trevanian Road. We can have some talks with the county about that property and if there are any options to maybe add this 4.4 acres to it. So we have a lot to work out still, but the idea would be to lock in the option to purchase the property, and then the remainder of the property can go into ag preservation, and we'll have some time to negotiate whether it's going to be a subdivision or appended to the other property that's being held for the bypass or Antrim Boulevard. So hopefully for Monday night, we can authorize the mayor to go ahead with that, and that'll at least lock in our option for the 4.4 acres. And last thing I added on here, we've talked off and on about doing a comprehensive review of our charter and code. And I know Henry had done a little preliminary work on that. I've talked it over with the department heads for their respective parts, you know, the parts of the code that apply to their departments, to start having them review and be ready with suggestions. And I'm hoping that we can start on that in September. I don't think anything's going to happen this month on it, but I'd like to get rolling on that. And, you know, hopefully then when Henry comes back, we'll at least have something started that we can hand over to him. Let's see. That's about it for my report.
Questions for Jim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do want to call something to your attention that's in the Public Works report. Kevin included a roofing estimate, number 6 in the Public Works
Yes.
department. There's a quote from Donald B. Smith. The blower building at the wastewater treatment plant is leaking. The insulation is getting saturated and we're getting water in the building, so we obviously need to fix that. Donald B. Smith has done other flat roof work in the city for the city, and we've been very happy with it, but the proposal came in at $22,700, so that's over the $20,000, over the limit that I can authorize. So Monday night, I'd like to have something on the agenda to authorize the roof repair.
I would like to see more quotes. And the only reason I bring this up is that I recently put a roof on my house, and I called about 5 people to give me quotes, and there was a large disparity between roofing companies. And I think that we would be better off if we could wait 30 days and get 2 or 3 more quotes.
I agree with that. We should have at least 2, maybe 3 quotes on most bids of this size.
What is the sense of urgency from Public Works regarding this project, Jim?
Well, we do have water getting into the building, so obviously we don't want to have a Band-Aid fixed on there for too long. The Public Works was recommending that we go with Donald B. Smith because they have, the last time we had to have work done on a flat roof, we solicited proposals from a number of roofing contractors, and Donald B. Smith was the only one that came back in with one, that the flat roof work is not something a lot of roofers do, right. At least not in this immediate area. So I can certainly talk to Kevin about getting, reaching out to a couple other contractors and seeing if we can get some more bids.
Yeah, can we get that quickly, given the fact that it rains all the time?
I don't think I agree with what you're saying. Flat roofs is not the same as a pitch roof. But there's a bunch of roofing companies out there. I didn't realize there was all these roofing companies out there. And it bothers me from the standpoint that the last half dozen bids or so have been one bidder. And we need to get away from that. We need to make sure that we get multiple bids to assure that we're giving the citizens the best bang for the buck. And, typically somebody who puts the roof on is going to guarantee it for a particular amount of time anyway. So whether it's Donald B. Smith or S&K or whoever it happens to be, they will have a warranty to back it up.
May I ask what equipment is currently housed in this and that could be in danger of damage because of the leaking roof? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think it's the blower motors that aerate the tanks, the big concrete tanks at the plant.
Okay.
I don't know the right terms for each tank, but
right.
But that's it's just a large industrial blower that
right
feeds into the tanks. I don't know what other equipment is in there though.
Okay. The only other thing I would say to the council in considering pushing this off another month is you'll even see in the quote here that rotted sheathing, if any, will be replaced on time and material basis. So the longer this roof is leaking, the more chance of there being rotted sheathing, which will then cost us more money. So, do we take that risk of having to spend more because we wanted to see more quotes, or do we just go with who has been good to us and fix what could potentially damage equipment that is under this roof? The roof is there for a reason.
Well, I say if we can't get the quotes quickly, and usually you don't get them so quick.
And I know there have been times in the past where we've reached out to different contractors to try to solicit a bid and no one responds.
If you come across a contractor that you know does flat roof work, can we just, like call them and say, hey, can you come give me a quote?
Well, I don't think this, we need to go to a RFP or anything.
Yeah, that will take too long.
Somebody needs to get on the phone and call half a dozen contractors and say, I need a quote next week on this roof. And if they'll say, yeah, I can be there, or no, I can't, then hang up the phone, call the next one.
Let me see what we can do between now and Monday.
Okay.
And if we can get somebody that's responsive, we'll...
Well, if he needs any names, let me know.
Yeah, because we don't have time for an RFP.
Right.
All right.
It's reasonable. I think you could get a quote on this building. It's early in the week from flat roof contractors. There's lots of them in Baltimore.
I know they're all also very busy because of all the damage from the recent rains. So that's...
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any question on the departmental reports? A lot going on in town this summer, so I'm glad to see so much economic activity downtown and throughout town, actually. Carroll Business Challenge is next week. We have 2 contenders for that prize.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
I mean, I said, what did I say, next week?
You said next week. It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. I would be late if I wasn't.
Yes, you'd be very late.
But anyway, that's exciting news. So, let's move into the legal report. Do you have any questions?
2 items. 3 items, really. The first item is, have you all seen the new sidewalk out by Creekside? Right?
Very nice.
How many years coming? So, of course, when they were finished doing that, they were immediately on the phone saying, have you seen it? We did it. We did it. We're ready to be done. So they've asked us to complete a punch list again. And so Jim and Kevin and the gang are doing that. The target is to have the punch list at least prepared and presented to them so that at next month's meeting, we can come back to you and talk about letter of credit releases. Remember, you got to think back, they're in the construction phase. So these are letter of credit releases for construction money that would be replaced or maintained at maintenance amounts. So it's not completely ever done. So there's a list of things that has to happen and then the deeds to be executed, just like we did with Meadowbrook recently. So that's on the horizon, and that's fantastic news that we can get that off of our plate and moving ahead. So,
is the sidewalk subject to the same time schedule that a road would be, where we make it go through seasons and things like that to ensure it's sufficient? Okay.
What will be protected there in the fact that we're going to hold money, 10% of the value of the sidewalk for 2 years. So we actually have a longer period of time on that than we would the road. The road thing that the councilman's talking about, obviously, is we can make a road after it's paved over winter and then start the 2 years. So you almost get an extra 6 months. There wouldn't be the extra 6 months here for that.
Okay.
Okay, the next issue we've been dealing with is with Meads Crossing, and we've reached somewhat of an impasse, not with the developer, but with the railroad. You know that their major entrance is going to have a railroad crossing there, which is the Maryland-Midland, a subsidiary of Genesee and Wyoming Railroad. And to do that, their offices are in Jacksonville. We need to get an easement, more or less. It's a license agreement. And the developer has handled all the legwork, they're handling all the money, but the city is going to be the ultimate licensee because it's going to be a city road. So after we got around the rim of that, saying, yeah, we'll apply, we did. And now it's dragging out. They're just, a big corporation all over the U.S. They're making a decision. I don't know what the decision's going to be because it can happen. It's just a matter of going through the steps. And that is causing a lot of angst for the developer now because when it was first talked about, it was May or June. And now here we are in August, and without the crossing, they can't get their new home starts. So that crossing has to be put in. So they've asked for our help, and what we've suggested at this point, because Jim has already contacted the Jacksonville office and they gave him the answer you'd expect. We're working on it, and it has to go through channels. So we're going to ask the mayor to send a letter to say how important it is to the city. And then Councilman Vigliotti has a relationship, a very good relationship with Senator Reedy. Ask him to reach out to them as well, with the thought that if he had to go to the Secretary of Transportation, he would, to make this thing happen. So that's where we are at that point. And so we'll be getting a letter to the mayor and then asking the councilman to talk to the senator to make sure that happens. Anything that can happen will benefit us, because if they miss their home starts, then the house of cards that we built start to fall apart. So that's the story with that. They have applied for four building permits, and we haven't granted them yet because they don't have the gravel base coat down, but the 4 building permits are for the models. So they're moving ahead. And not to steal any thunder from the councilman from the Planning Commission, but now the Planning Commission has given approval for the elevations of the rest of the houses out there. So now there's actually models that can be built and things can move ahead. So we're held up with the railroad track. Okay, the last item deals with one of your items of new business, which is the Tannery Barn Public Works Agreement. You're all familiar with the Tannery Barn project out here at the Tannery Barn, and they needed a simple public works agreement because there are no public improvements whatsoever. There's only 2 things that affect the public good. That is the sidewalk. Remember, there's been an issue about a sidewalk there forever, that they needed to give us an easement to put a sidewalk in at a future date when it became necessary. And that's exactly what we did with the George's restaurant or bed and breakfast up here, is they gave us the easement for a future sidewalk. So that was in the public works agreement that's in front of you. And then their parking area portion of their property, their use is gravel. And it's the city policy that, and the Planning Commission has said that the gravel needs to be paved. And at this point in time, they wanted an extension, so the Public Works Agreement gives them 2 years from the time the UNO is issued to have that paved to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission, meaning that there could be some alternative to paving. Maybe they could invent it within the next 2 years, but satisfaction to the Planning Commission. They've already executed the easement and given it to us, and they've already signed the Public Works Agreement in hopes that you guys will ratify it on Monday night. So that will bring that business to town, which is an events type place if you're not familiar.
You know, that brings up a very good point. There's a lot of innovative, eco-friendly ways to pave today that weren't available when we passed that code requiring everything to be paved. We probably need to include in our code some flexibility in that regard. So, I mean, it's especially on a low traffic area like a parking lot.
Right. I think that our code can be interpreted to allow something like the permeable pavements. However, the soils here permeable pavements don't work here because of the way the soils are. You know, the red cert doesn't let it through. So there might be some other things. The issue of gravel itself, we had that issue, I can't tell you the number of years ago, with the Antrim parking lot that was across the street that was gravel. And we required that because gravel and pavement are considered the same as far as stormwater runoff. There's no difference there. But it's the aesthetics and things like that. And I think that the reality that they found out is after they paved it, their clientele was happier because ladies with heels don't want to walk on a gravel thing. Well, this isn't just a parking lot for them. This is their event space. So would you like to go in heels to a gravel event space? So I think everybody's purposes will merge, and I think that's the reason behind giving them 2 years is they wanted to get up and running. Their whole plan is a phased plan where they eventually will take their operation from their planned area under a tent to inside the building. And then when it's inside the building, they wouldn't need the outside the way they do. That's roughly what I took from it. So hopefully in 2 years, we will be able to figure something out. And so that's what your item number 4 is that you would approve that Public Works Agreement that's laying in front of you on Monday night. That's all I have.
Any questions for Jay?
No, sir.
Very well, then let's move into new business. And you have the financial report. Anybody have any questions on the bi-monthly financial report? All right, that'll be up for approval. And likewise, the accounts payable. Anybody have any questions on the accounts payable?
No, sir.
All right. Number 3 is one we've been dealing with for a while. Revisions to Chapter 85, open burning. Jim, do you want to give us a little background on what we've got to deal with there?
Sure. We've had a handful of issues with individuals getting a little carried away with either campfires or that have been burning trash or recyclable items instead of items that don't produce a lot of smoke, things like that. Our open burning ordinance basically requires a permit for anything to be burned, any combustion outside that's not contained in a structure. The hardline interpretation of that would be that you can't have your little chimney, you can't have your barbecue grill, your gas grill, because it's all outdoor burning. And obviously we really don't want to take that stance. But from an enforcement standpoint, it makes it difficult to enforce the code because the violation would be burning outdoors without a permit. So basically, we don't want to have to tell folks that they can't have the little chimneys or the little fire bowls in the backyard or things like that, or that they can't barbecue on their deck. But we would like to update the code to provide some exceptions to the permit requirement. And that would be crafted so that we have some definitions in there, and that it would give, from the enforcement standpoint, it would give either law enforcement or myself the opportunity to, have some clear boundaries on what's allowed and what's not, so that, we could exempt things like the chimneys or the, and there's all kinds of things on the market now. There's, outdoor dining tables with a fire pit built right in, and, things like that. So we don't want to stop people from being able to use things like that and to use them responsibly and as they're intended. But we want to stop people from burning trash, and we want to stop people from building big bonfires that produce a lot of ash that gets all on the neighbor's property and things of that nature. And those are the things that have been generating complaints. And they talk about the 80-20 rule, where you spend 80% of your effort for 20% of the problem. This is like a 99-1 kind of thing. The vast majority of people get it, but there's just a handful that we've sent letters out and threatened to fine them if they have bonfires again or burn trash again. And of course it happens in the evening, and someone may or may not call the police, and usually Monday morning we have a message, so-and-so was at it again. And by that point it's done, and we've got photos of, the neighbor with the ash on the car or whatever it might be. But it really is a difficult thing to enforce the way the code's written right now. So rather than have absolutely nothing without a permit, we want to make some exemptions to the permit.
Do you have a recommendation that you'll present to council?
We will. I've spoken with Chief Tyler and with Jay, and we've got some ideas on how to proceed with that, and we've got some samples to kind of pick and choose from. So we hope that we can have something before you next month. But in the meantime, we'd like some direction if you're willing to entertain that code revision.
Can I ask a question
Again,
about the permitting process, Mr. Mayor? For these things that are not exempt in the policy, what is the process for getting a permit for legal burning?
The city manager issues those permits. They, I believe, give an opportunity for adjacent property owners to comment. It's almost like an administrative variance type thing where the neighbors would be notified, given an opportunity to comment on it, and if nobody objects and the material proposed to be burned is not something that's going to create a hazardous condition or noxious fumes or things like that, then the city manager can issue a burn permit. We've only done a handful of them. I think the Baptist Church had a bonfire a year or two ago that they came in and got the open burning permit for it. But Typically, it's really an education thing for folks who do have a burn barrel. If somebody's, burning during the day, we go out and we tell them, you need to put that out. You need to, you can't burn trash. You can't burn stuff that makes smoke, plastic bottles or, dense smoke. So, so the permitting requirement is a little time consuming, and it's really, I think the intent of that ordinance was really to stop larger scale burning and the burning of trash and things like that. So part of the permit process is that the materials to be burned, that there's not a reasonable alternative to dispose of them. So really it's intended more to address things like trash than cooking outside or having a little campfire. But the way it's written is just very, kind of all or nothing.
Well, it seems that it would be an easy fix just to say that recreational fire is permitted and trash burning is not permitted. I mean, why wouldn't that be all you'd need to do?
We've told certain individuals that exact thing, and of the few that we've had to go that far with, there's, I guess, one that has not stopped. And as I said, it's been difficult to enforce because the violation is failure to get a permit. And basically nobody in town gets a permit to have their little chimney going or their fire pit in their table or whatever it might be. So we don't want to be enforcing the code on one person and letting everybody else
Is the chapter 85 referred to in this line item in our packets tonight?
Yes. The chapter is not printed in the packets.
Can I get a copy of that before you begin your revision of it?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And when we do present the revisions, we'll do track changes so that you'll be able to see, the current ordinance, and then it'll strike through anything that's deleted and, underline anything that's added, that sort of thing. So it'll be very clear what we're changing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess we've already addressed the Tannery barn and the Syrian property issues. Any further comments on those?
Also, the Syrian property proposal under the legal report. We're going to get a vote on that Monday, I guess, whether to authorize the mayor.
All right. Now we come to public comment.
Oh, Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
can I talk about other new business at this moment?
Sure.
So last month I went to, I should preface with everybody knows what's going on with Facebook right now and attempting to protect consumer privacy and the use of Facebook, right? And at our business breakfast last month here in Taneytown, I learned about a new technology that is, it's coming a lot faster than I would have guessed, right? And what this does is that if you're a customer going into a store, whether by an app in your phone or by an actual, scan of your face and your body, the store will have technology that will recognize you when you come into the store. And it'll be able to do things like track the purchases that you make, track the amount of times you come into the store, how often you come into the store, when you come into the store. And basically it'll create kind of like a Facebook profile about you, but specifically for that store. And with the concern being right now that people are wary about, having that kind of, information collated, collected, and used at some future points, again, because this technology is coming faster than, even I think, right? And, those of us who are millennials are supposed to be, abreast of all of these things, but it really is coming faster than I thought, right? So that being, the case, and given the rapidity and the ease of which technology is disseminated with different businesses now, I would like to get a discussion going where, maybe by way of a regulation or a code here in town, that any business that wants to use that kind of technology to track customers, by default, that would not be set. So basically, if I was a customer and I was going into a store in town, I would have to voluntarily choose to participate in being tracked rather than a store using this technology and automatically tracking me without my permission.
Well, you know they do that anyway. Every time you swipe your Food Lion card, they know exactly what you bought, when you bought it, and who, and how much you spent for it. I mean,
Well, if I use my credit card, I could pay with cash too. I mean,
what's your bonus card is what I'm talking about. That's how they track. They track everything you buy.
but what this technology will do will actually...
And you do that on the line too when you buy anything online. But I agree with what you're saying. It's more invasive, I suppose, if they scan your face. I mean, I guess if they do how many chicken wings I wanted at Buffalo Wild Wings, that would be kind of helpful. But I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, it just seemed logical that you'd have to give your permission for that.
Well, but you would assume that with the way Facebook used to operate as well, right? I mean, it's only within the last couple of years that they've started enacting controls where people can say, well, I choose not to opt in, or I will opt into, this collection of information. I mean, it's what just happened with Cambridge Analytica, where they were able to take information, from Facebook and use it without the consent of the people from whom the information was collected. And I guess that's, the concern there is the privacy, it's the privacy. I mean, you go into the food store, right, or you go into Buffalo Wild Wings, and you're like, oh, this is great, they know I want 24 wings, right? But, you would be consenting to that. It wouldn't be, me walking into, some store across the street and they saying, oh, well, Joe likes to buy, old books or something, right? And then that information being, traded or sold or transferred to some other company without my knowledge and being used. And again, the concern there is the privacy. And basically would not be, in my mind, a regulation saying that, no store could not use this. But basically that if you were going to use this, you would have to give the customer the option, to opt in. They would have to voluntarily choose to participate rather than saying, this is going to automatically scan my face when it's like when you go to, Food Line, right? When you use the MVP card, you're voluntarily choosing to use the MVP card. But in this situation, you're having your face scanned, you're having your movements scanned.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know whether it's beyond our scope of controlling or not, but I suppose it's something we need to be concerned about.
I mean, I would not imagine why it would be out of, our scope of ability to protect our citizens in town to say, if you're a store and you're going to use this technology, make it so that the customer has to opt in.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do a little research and see if there's any other jurisdictions that have addressed this issue?
Okay.
I'm not sure what control we have within the boundaries of a private business, even one open to the public. We can generally regulate the outside of the business, we can regulate the sidewalk, we can do things like that, but when it comes to what's happening in the business, I don't believe we have a whole lot of jurisdiction there, and I may be wrong, and Jay may or may not be prepared to respond to that, but...
You could always require a sign be posted, we scan your face when you come in the door, so you can choose whether to come in or not.
We're going to need to do some research.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with the expectation of privacy and what expectation of privacy you have in a public setting or a semi-public setting, and then the consent for that. But for us, we'd have to start with what is the technology and how does it get regulated? I mean, we need to get the essence of what your presentation was about to see how it's done and where it's done. And so, I heard somebody talking and said that maybe Walmart does it somewhere. So it would be interesting to see what jurisdictions that where Walmart does it have addressed that.
Well, you see commercials all over the television about the people that got their cell phones and they are paying for stuff just by walking up to the counter, putting their cell phone on the counter and walking out. And a lot of that stuff is fingerprint recognized or facially. You have to enter that information into your phone before it'll complete the sale. So I mean, Joe's right. It's here. It's technology that's available now. And how you deal with it is the only thing I'm saying is I think there's probably people a lot more experienced in this kind of thing than we are, that we could draw on their expertise and see how it's going to help. I don't know. I'm sure there's
You might want to reach out to the National League of Cities. That's because MML is not going to have that except through NLC.
Well,
See,
maybe,
I just
maybe
figured
the
that-
National League of Cities or something like that. We can,
See, I figured like as we were dealing with SB 1188 a couple of months ago with the small cell towers, that this is something we want to be, out in front of rather than, reacting to a situation as it breaks.
probably right.
So, but if it's all right, I'd love to talk more with Jay or to try to reach out to find out more about this. So.
Well, I'd like to see if there was anything, any kind of system out there to address this, any kind of regulation ordinance, and we can look at that and Google it. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
What else? All right, I'm ready to entertain public comment regarding any agenda items. Does anyone have any agenda items they'd like to speak on?
Hello, Barbara Cook, 314 Clubside Drive. I'd like to talk about this Sewell property. I think it's a good idea to keep that on the open about that, because we know we have Meads Crossing coming in that may bring us 400 or more children in. And it seems to me if the Sewells built an adult community there, it would be a win-win, and it would be balancing out taxing to help with the kids that are coming in.
Thank you. Robert?
Good evening, Robin Frazier from Bentley Street. I just wanted to offer that the county and the Board of Education have a lot of flat top buildings, and if you reach out to them, they probably could give you a list of folks they've worked with and who does a good job and maybe who doesn't. Thank you.
Good suggestion, thank you. Anyone else? Very well. Anyone care to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.